let's not waste any time. Let's get right to it. And let's watch and listen to Mr. Gavin Newsom as he came out in full force, by the way. No joke. He came out in full force against Mr. and President Donald Trump. Let's take a listen.
Happening right now is very different than anything we've seen before. On Saturday morning, when federal agents jumped out of an unmarked van near a Home Depot parking lot, they began grabbing people, a deliberate targeting of a heavily Latino suburb. A similar scene played out when a clothing company was raided downtown. In other actions, a U.S. citizen, 9 months pregnant, was arrested, a 4-year-old girl taken, families separated, friends quite literally disappearing. In response, everyday Angelenos came out to exercise their constitutional right to free speech and assembly, to protest their government's actions. In turn, the state of California and the city and county of Los Angeles sent our police officers to help keep the peace. And with some exceptions, they were successful. Like many states, California is no stranger to this sort of unrest. We manage it regularly and with our own law enforcement. But this, again, was different. What then ensued was the use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets, illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder. And the president, he did it on purpose. As the news spread throughout LA, anxiety for family and friends ramped up. Protests started again. By night, several dozen lawbreakers became violent and destructive. They vandalized property. They tried to assault police officers. Many of you have seen the video clips of cars burning on cable news. If you incite violence, I want to be clear about this. If you incite violence or destroy our communities, you're going to be held to account. That kind of criminal behavior will not be tolerated, full stop. Already more than 220 people have been arrested, and we're reviewing tapes to build additional cases, and people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery. But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces, not in LA, not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities. They're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. It will keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? Ask everyone. Take time, reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. This is a president who in just over 140 days has fired government watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases, quite literally, are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And the threat of defunding them, at threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has increasingly been given way to the rule of Don. The founding fathers, they didn't live and die to see this kind of moment. It's time for all of us to stand up. Justice Brandeis, he said it best. In a democracy, the most important office, with all due respect, Mr. President, is not the presidency, and it's certainly not governor. The most important office is office of citizen. At this moment, we all need to stand up and be held to account, a higher level of accountability. If you exercise your First Amendment rights, please do it peacefully. I know many of you are feeling deep anxiety, stress, and fear, but I want you to know that you are the antidote to that fear and that anxiety. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.
Wow. Very much interesting right there what we're seeing
But this, again,
over there.
was
That was Gavin Newsom as he was going and strong coming at Donald Trump. And I'll tell you this. I don't disagree with what he said. What I disagree with is that is actually what's happening, right? Because I mean, if you listen to Gavin Newsom, it could give you goosebumps because the way he's speaking, very much eloquently, and that's why many thought that he could be the salvation of the Democratic Party, and maybe that's what he's trying to do in the future. If you didn't know what he was talking about, or what, if you just turned the TV open and you lived in Greece, and you would hear him, you would say, "Wow, this is one hell of a potential president candidate, or one hell of a governor." The fact of the matter is that he's made a lot of mistakes, and he has failed his city as well. I will agree that this does bring anxiety, nervousness, and it unsettles, in this case, the Hispanic community, but all immigrants, to be honest. And that's not good. That's why earlier on, I brought these suggestions that could work for to do this, to go about it in a peaceful and a more humane way. Once you have gotten rid of every criminal that needs to be getting rid of, and look, Gavin Newsom is what he says sounds good, um, but for example, I know they're Republican, but we got here ICE prepares to deploy tactical agents to Democratic cities nationwide. Texas Governor Craig Abbott said Tuesday night that he will deploy the National Guard in the state as rallies continue nationwide. The thing is, this thing becomes a Democrat versus Republican once other Republican states do deploy their National Guard, and California complains that their National Guard is there. And so it becomes okay. So one city needs it, the other one doesn't. What does it become? It becomes a Democrat versus Republican thing, and that in itself is a nonsensical argument because I just cannot stand parties and people that just vote for their party and think their party does everything perfect because it makes no sense. It makes citizens look like they're robots being manhandled by just a color or a political party in itself. So, um, I don't know. I mean, listen, he can make sense on certain things, but at the end of the day, there's a fundamental issue when it comes to just how he's handled the situation, even lying. And Trump pulled out the receipts. He said there was no phone call, but there certainly was. Trump pulled out the receipts, and just there, he's lying. Now we don't know the contents of the conversation, but at the end of the day, we know that Newsom ended up lying just by stating the fact that he didn't have a conversation or a phone call with President Trump, and before the riots, started happening. So, or during the riots. Anyways, what do you think? Let me know in the comment section down below.